this evening or whenever you're watching this recording, and welcome to a Ohio State versus Texas preview here on the OHIO podcast. Do us a big favor if you don't mind and smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Big push this week, Chris, to get to 4,500. We're about 50 or so away from hitting that number, so we're going to try our very best to get there. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so you can help us reach that number. And if you don't mind, ring the bell, get notified if you like our content. That way you don't miss any time we go live or we drop something new on your lap here at the OHIO podcast. By the way, we want to know what you think about what we think down in the comment section below. So give us your score prediction for the game if you don't mind. We will give ours at the end of this video, but we want to know what your score prediction for the game will be. We might ask you some other questions for the chat as well. But Chris, we're here. We finally made it to week 1 of college football, Ohio State versus Texas, the Cotton Bowl rematch, my man. Game number 1 right here in the shoe against the Longhorns.
And it's about time, man. It has been a tumultuous offseason, with everything, obviously the excitement, the hype around the championship, the disappointment around what happened with the team up north, the trash talking that's gone back and forth between all the different fan bases on social media. It's all coming to an end. It's time. It's time to get out there and do it on the field, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm pumped about that, man, and I can't wait for this game. I can't wait to dive into this. This is going to be a fun video, yeah. Chris. And so let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into it. Dive right in, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. It's gonna for those of you who've been around before, it's gonna feel a little bit similar, but it's also gonna feel a little different. We've changed the format of our preview videos a little bit. After some great success for our season previews in the Big Ten, we've decided to try to keep that structure here. So that's gonna feel very similar to you. 12 p.m. Eastern on Fox. That's the game time. That's the kick time. Brutus and Bevo, there they are, my friends. They're going to be ready to do battle on Fox this Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. out on the Pacific West Coast. Yes,
your graphics missing something. Well, you got Brutus. You got Bevo. Where's the donkey representing that jackass Dave Portnoy that's going to be there with Fox, man?
Only Chris swinging in early at 3 minutes into this recording. I couldn't stay away from Portnoy. Yeah, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what time the game time is. Texas and Ohio State have a 4-game history all time against each other. First played each other in a home-and-home series in 2005 and 2006, where both the visiting teams won those games, 25-22 in the first one for the Longhorns, and then Ohio State the very next season got the revenge 24-7 in 2006. And then in 2009, they met in Glendale, Arizona, where the Longhorns got another 3-point victory, 24-21. And of course, last year in the Cotton Bowl down in Arlington, Texas, Ohio State won 28-14 to even the series at 2 games apiece. Chris, I want to get your initial response here. It's gone back and forth, back and forth. No one's won 2 in a row.
Till now.
Okay. You don't think there's anything involved in that? You don't think history could,
I'm not a person who believes in superstitions. I do believe in trends. But this, you look at the 2005 to 2009, that may have been one of the high points in Texas football. Those were, those years, they were ultra competitive. And are they competitive this year? Yes. They were competitive last year. But to me, I feel like these are 2 different Ohio State's a different program. I feel like it's a better, more solid program now than it was specifically during that 2009 game.
Okay. I got you. I got you. Let's keep her moving here. Let's go to by the numbers, ladies and gentlemen. The series is tied 2-2. Like I said, last loss to Texas was in 2009 in the Fiesta Bowl. Last meeting was, of course, last year in the postseason. Ohio State won 28-14. Largest margin of victory, that came in 2006, a 24-7 win. Largest margin of defeat, well, that's both of them. They were both 3-point losses, 05 and 09. Ohio State's longest win streak over Texas, there isn't one. It's one. Texas's longest win streak over Ohio State, there isn't one. It's one, like we said. Ryan Day's record against Texas, 1-0. Steve Sarkisian's record against Ohio State, 0-1. Steve Sarkisian, when he was at Washington, never crossed over to play Ohio State. I looked into that. I wanted to double check. The 2 years he was at USC, they never played Ohio State those years either. He was the offensive coordinator at Alabama when they spanked Ohio State in the national championship in 2020. However, I don't count that to his record. He wasn't the head coach. He was the offensive coordinator, and let's be honest, he was like a cat playing with a mouse that game against our defensive coach.
Well, yeah, you had an Ohio State defense that was weakened against an absolute offensive juggernaut. I mean, that Alabama team in 2020 has to go down as one of the top 5 teams ever to play. That offense was just amazing. And you know what, honestly, Tommy Eichenberg, or I'm sorry, not Eichenberg, Tough Borland, trying to match up with Devontae, which we saw that them get isolated together a few times. That was just humiliating, man.
Yeah, indeed. Interesting stat for you. There's two stats, two I guess you could say statistics that are going to clash on Saturday. One is Ohio State's season opening win streak. Do you know the last time Ohio State lost a season opener?
To Texas?
Those weren't season openers.
No. Well, I'm thinking back to the kickoff classic. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Kickoff classic.
1999, Miami. That was the last time Ohio State lost a season opener. And they've played some pretty big season openers.
Absolutely.
They've played conference games in season openers. They had Notre Dame in the shoe a couple years ago as a season opener. I think there was another big one too. I can't really remember. I remember thinking this is not an easy season opener. But traditionally they get kind of a softball before they get the opportunity to play a big one in the second or third game in the non-con schedule. But that is one stat that is in favor of Ohio State is they do really well in season openers, better than a lot of people. In fact, I think it is the longest or second longest current streak for season openers in college football, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then I mentioned this to you a couple weeks ago. Here's the other stat. This one's in Texas's favor. A first-time starting quarterback in the last 20 years is 0-18 when going up against the number one team in the country in the AP poll. 0-18 in 20 years. Now, again, let's think about this for a second. Typically, the number one team in the country is a Power 5 going up against a much lesser opponent in a season opener.
Correct.
And that's where you're going to get a lot of those losses against a weaker opponent. There are some of those 0-18s that are first-time starting quarterbacks of better teams in the middle of the season going up against a number one because of an injury. But it's not the guy that they were expecting to be the starter a week before that big game.
Right.
So this is, I think, the best chance to break that 0-18 streak because Julian's saying, although he is a first-time starter, Chris, he's not a typical first-time starter.
Now, here's my thing, Eric. 20 years ago, 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 20 For me, I don't know if we really do break this streak because I don't know that Texas is really number one.
Okay.
Yes, they've got that AP ranking, but, a bunch of sports writers sitting there throwing out numbers doesn't really impress me a lot.
Okay.
I look at this team and I feel like, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. And honestly, I can see the argument for the people who have them above Ohio State simply because of a very overhyped quarterback, which we're going to talk about here in the near future. But at the same time, you look at the history of what's happened with the cheaters up north in Ohio State last year. I think conventional wisdom, even though we wouldn't agree with it completely in this case either, conventional wisdom, why is Penn State not number one?
SEC bias.
There you go.
All right, here we go. We are going to now break down the tail of the tape. Now, I preface this by saying this will look very different in weeks 2 through 14, or games 2 through 12, I guess you could say, and then into the postseason. The tail of the tape will look very different. But since everything would be zeros all the way down and no one wants to see that, we decided to look at last year's final statistics matching up Ohio State and Texas in the tail of the tape. Chris, take it away.
Yeah, Eric, you said how different it's going to look, and it really is because these are two teams that rank, I believe, 101st and 104th in returning production. But after I run through these numbers, I'm going to throw a few names out of guys who are back. So you look at the tail of the tape. Offensively, Ohio State clearly has an edge. They lead in points per game, 35.7 to 33. They lead in rushing yards per game, 166.4 to 158.9. Now, passing yards per game, Texas did have a slight advantage, about 15 yards a game with the 278.7 to 263. Total yards per game, again, slight advantage, about 7 yards more, 8 yards more with the 429 versus the 437. Third down efficiency, though. Key number, Ohio State had the advantage there, 43.55, but not a huge advantage, as Texas was only about 1% less. Red zone efficiency, however, 88.71 in red zone efficiency for Ohio State. Awesome. 77 on the part of Texas, not bad. And then you flip it over to the defense. 12.9 points per game allowed by Ohio State. I believe that was number one in all of college football, Eric.
It was.
To Texas's 15.3. Again, a very good effort.
It was, and that was second, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
in college football.
You look at the rushing yards allowed per game. Ohio State allowed less than 90 yards per game, where Texas was right around 110. You got 167 passing yards per game given up by Ohio State versus 173.8 by Texas. 254 total yards per game is all that Ohio State allowed. Now think about that, Eric. 254 yards per game. And this was a team that gave up some yards to a couple of bad teams, but really tightened it up against some really quality opponents. Third down efficiency, give the slight edge to Texas, only allowing opponents 31.42% rate. And then turnovers, Ohio State, this is one spot where I'm going to say they got to get better. They only got 1.2 turnovers per game, where you had Texas at 1.9. Now, if you look at that, and you think about all that, those are great numbers for both teams. But as I said, both teams have lost a lot. If you look at Texas, they are only returning 7 players who started last year who are actually positional players or play on offense or defense. They do add a 8th guy off of special teams. But the safety, Michael Tafe, of course, Arch Manning, although I don't know that we would call him a starter.
I wouldn't.
But for argument's sake, they are. Anthony Hill, linebacker. Colin Simmons, very good defensive end, guys. This is a guy you better be aware of.
All-American, yep.
Yes, absolutely. Another returning offensive starter, right guard DJ Campbell. You got DeAndre Moore, the wide receiver. Ryan Wingo, another talented wide receiver. Quintravion Wisner. Now, here's a guy who played running back. But if you remember, running back was a almost running back by committee at times with Texas last year.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
With Jaden Blue taking a lot of the key snaps. Trey Moore, edge rusher, former AAC Defensive Player of the Year. He's back with the team for this season as well. So some talented guys, Eric, but I don't know if there's anybody that absolutely blows me away with the exception of Colin Simmons. Then you flip over to Ohio State. They're returning the best offensive player in college football in Jeremiah Smith.
Yep.
The best defensive player in college football with Caleb Downs.
Yep.
Arguably the best linebacker in college football with Sonny Styles.
Yep.
You've got a great number 2 wide receiver in Carnell Tate.
Yep.
You've got Carson Hinsman, the guy who I think really is the glue that holds that line together, back at center. And then you've got 2 cornerbacks who played significant time. Obviously, Iggy was a starter. Jermaine Matthews played that nickel quite a bit. Did spell
Hancock.
Yes.
Jordan Hancock.
Thank you. So, of the returning starters, Eric, I like a lot more what we've got coming back from Ohio State than I do.
Or was it Lathan Ransom?
He played a lot, just spelling a lot of different people. I even think he was in there for Denzel a couple times.
Yes, he was.
So this is a team, Ohio State team, that I think is being severely overlooked, primarily because of the names of the quarterbacks.
And don't forget, Austin Severveld and Luke Montgomery played along
Integra.
All 4 of them played significantly in the college football playoff and into the national championship game.
And they were dominant.
And they also beat Texas as well.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about that for a second, just real quick, Eric, because you wanted to mention the Cotton Bowl, and I think that's a great idea. If you look at this, people want to talk about Arch Manning and his experience. Arch had a lot of experience against teams that were not the greatest when he was spelling for Quinn Ewers. He had 1 play versus Ohio State. This is the guy people were saying is going to be the savior of Texas football. And he had 1 play in their biggest game of the year. But if you look at this, Ohio State, you had them come out defensively very dominant. They won that game, of course, 28-14. Overall, both teams had an interception. Very even. Kicking wise, it was all extra points. There was no special teams really tested there. But what I will say is this. Ohio State got to the quarterback 4 times and put him on the ground.
Mm.
Texas,
5 if you count Arch's
strips
concussion.
Oh, the concussion, yeah. Yeah. You've got actually 4 sacks, and then of course, as you said, the concussion, which actually I believe ended up a small gain. 8 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a gain, but it was a loss for him.
It was a loss. Game. And then you look at Texas. Yeah, they got to Will Howard twice. The other big number is the passes defense, the pass deflections, where names like Kenyatta Jackson, names like Malik Hartford, names like Caden McDonald, Caleb Downs. These guys all had pass deflections.
Which means
these are all guys that are back this year.
Which means they played. They were in that game. Yes.
So, Eric, I'm telling you, everyone wants to talk about the lack of experience for Ohio State. It's not as bad as people think. I think Texas is actually the less experienced team here.
Interesting. All right. Gerald from the Longhorn Republic was who I interviewed from behind enemy lines. It's a great interview. Gerald's a great media member. Does a great job for Texas following their program. And we get into the weeds, Chris, about the narrative of if Arch Manning is so great, why couldn't he supplant Quinn Ewers last year? So here's what I want to ask all of you in the chat. And I want to ask you, Texas fans who have watched this video up to this point. Who would you rather have starting this game if you're Texas, and why? Arch Manning or Quinn Ewers? Who would you rather have start this football game for Texas if you are a Longhorn fan? If you're an Ohio State fan, and who would you choose between those two to go up against this Ohio State defense? Arch Manning or Quinn Ewers? I want to know what you think down in the comments section below. Chris, you want to answer that question real fast before we bring Gerald on for the interview?
Yeah, for me, I think I would rather, honestly, I would rather have Quinn Ewers. And I'll tell you why. Yes, he made a tragic mistake. But up to that mistake, he had this team in the game. I question the play calling more than I question Quinn Ewers' ability last year. Their sequence at the goal line was awful, Eric. Awful.
Yeah, it was bad. That's bad.
Arch Manning took one hit and was out. Quinn Ewers kept getting back up. Quinn Ewers is more experienced. And honestly, if it's this year, I'm a little scared because I think after what happened, Quinn Ewers would have had a hell of a chip on his shoulder. So if I had to choose between the two right now, given the circumstances of last year, I would have rather had Quinn Ewers.
Interesting. All right. We're going to bring Gerald from the Longhorn Republic on at this time. It's a great interview. You're going to love it. And then when the interview is finished, Chris and I will be back. We will give you our game prediction, score prediction. Hang around. And joining us here on the College Huddle now for our exclusive interview is Gerald Goodridge from the Longhorn Republic, our sister podcast in the College Huddle. Gerald, welcome back to the OHIO podcast once again.
Glad to be here. I feel like I'm like a friend of the show now. That's what.
Yeah.
Once you've been on twice, we say we're friends of the show on our show. So I feel like we should return the same, right?
Yeah, and you had me join yours last week, which was a lot of fun. You and your co-host, and got to talk a little bit. You guys asked some great questions, and it was a lot of fun. So happy to return the favor here as well this week. Tell everybody about yourself, about the Longhorn Republic, and if there's any Texas fans who stumble on this who aren't following you, where they can find you, and maybe even some Ohio State fans might want to continue following you guys after this week.
Yeah, so I my co-host and I have been doing the show for about 8 years now. We launched we're masochists. We launched during the Charlie Strong Texas era, so it was something, I don't know why we did that, but it turned out to be a good sign. So I graduated from Texas in 2008. So my co-host and I, we've actually been friends since high school, but he and I both got journalism degrees from Texas, and then weren't using them, and so we're texting each other about this stuff, so why don't we just hop on. So I'm currently in San Antonio, Texas, and trying to find a way to get to a game this year. Have fond memories of Texas and Ohio State playing. I was a freshman. This is my second year of college when Texas went to Ohio State with Vince Young and that Lima Swede catch, and I was working my job, and I shut down the ice cream shop and went out and celebrated on the street with people. So it's just a good time.
Those were some memories, man. 95, 96, the home and home series, the first two times these two storied programs played one another. They mirror one another in a lot of ways historically. And so, they're both considered blue blood programs, upper echelon programs, and they just never played each other until the 90s. It was weird. And now it feels like, Gerald, given the playoff era that we're in, we might be seeing each other quite a bit here in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those rivalries. I think that emerges those postseason rivalries you see. I think it's definitely going to be that. And Texas is just collecting teams with red in their jersey as rivals. They have Oklahoma, Arkansas, and now I think adding Ohio State to the mix just fits the color theme that Texas has been going for with rivals. So it kind of just fits right in.
There you go. Who's got the best orange color in the SEC? You
I mean,
guys are Tennessee.
it's got to be us, right? I'm not Tennessee's more safety orange. Like I'm not trying to avoid a pothole or something. Like it's just, and that's going to piss off Tennessee fans, but it is what it is, right? That's what I'm here for.
I wonder what Peyton Manning thinks about that answer.
I mean, look like a traffic cone.
Nice, nice. All right, let's start here. Now that the pleasantries are over, let's start here, man. So let's go back to the Cotton Bowl.
Mm.
You nailed that prediction, buddy. I remember you called for Ohio State in a close one, and it was a close one. You look at Ohio State's run in the college football playoff with, speaking of safety orange, Tennessee,
Yeah.
and then Oregon, and then Texas, and then Notre Dame kind of felt like a foregone conclusion after the Texas game. And for all purposes, the Cotton Bowl was your national championship game in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Whoever wins that game's going to go on and win the national championship, in my opinion. I think you would probably agree with that. I think most college football fans were. It's 21-14. You guys are driving, and then the sack, scoop, and score with Jack Sawyer on former roommate Quinn Ewers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that moment the Arch Manning era began. At that moment.
Yeah.
So take me back to that moment, and then let's fast forward to where we are today. So where from that moment to here, what has happened to this program?
Yeah, and I think you have to go back to the play before that, the strip sack, scoop, and score. The toss play in the end zone. I've said it multiple times. Caleb Downs is one of those. I call him blue shell players. I'm a nerd, right? Mario Kart. You think you're going in a good position, and the blue shell hits you, and they change a game with one game. Like that scoop and score is the one that went on the box score. But really, that blown up toss play before was the game changer, right? And that was like the story of Texas for most of the season, and a lot of their close games, the close wins, Texas sucked in the red zone. There's no two ways to say it. I think Steve Sarkisian would agree. And that was just another emblematic moment of that. And so, from there, you see Quinn Ewers make the decision. He had another year of eligibility, could have gone somewhere else, really wanted to end his career at Texas. He's gone. You lose players like Jahdae Barron on the defense. You lose Andrew Makuba on the back end of the defense, who Makuba was pretty instrumental in Texas's game plan in trying to put a top on Ohio State's defense in that game. And so there's been some turnover, some turmoil. Texas lost I call it 3.5 offensive linemen as well to the NFL. One of the guys that's returning has more starting experience. He was a rotational starter last year, depending on injuries and things like that. So Texas recycling a lot there, losing their top wide receiver threat, losing Gunnar Helm at tight end. So a lot of new personnel on the offense. That's kind of the big story of the offseason is the new personnel, right? Arch Manning is the bell cow of that, but you're going to have a new wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 on that roster. Basically, you're going to have a new tight end. You're going to have 3 new starters along the offensive line. So that's like the big story for Texas is they've done a great job recruiting. They've done an incredible job recruiting, right? Stacking those top 5, top 3 classes is how you get in the position where Ohio State and Texas, despite losing all of that, are still top 5, top 3 teams nationally going into the next season. Done a good job of developing. Texas is no longer where 5 stars go to die, right? Texas is now the place where 5 stars can go and thrive and make it to the league. So now we're sitting in a spot where Arch Manning has now stepped up into the role of starting quarterback. They're breaking in a lot of new guys. There's a lot of positive buzz about the young guys, but you don't really know what any of that means until you lace it up on Saturdays.
So, I don't know your roster as well, obviously, as what last year, and so I haven't been paying maybe as close attention as I should to the offseason for Texas. Is this a young players who were developed, who are getting their chance to play situation, or is this an NIL situation with a lot of new guys, or maybe NIL sprinkled in with the development of players?
Yeah, and I think you can't. living in 2025, you can't say NIL isn't a factor, especially at Texas. The reason why Texas was partially able to stack a lot of the offensive linemen, these young guys that are stepping up, was because Texas had an offensive lineman specific NIL deal with the Pancake Factory, right? They do some charity appearances, but every offensive lineman at Texas had guaranteed check coming in, and that helped bolster those numbers. And so they got them on campus, and then Kyle Flood developed them and kept them around, right? Kyle Flood, without a doubt, is one of the top 3-ish offensive line coaches in the country. I think most people wouldn't argue with that. There's a reason why Bama's offensive lines were so good with him, and they took a step back when he left. But ultimately, I think for Texas, most of these guys stepping in are folks that were part of these early Steve Sarkisian recruiting classes, these early Steve Sarkisian recruiting cycles, especially on the offensive side of the ball. All of the guys along the offensive line were part of that big offensive line class when Texas came in. I think it was 2022. There's a 2023 guy mixed in there in the mix, but ultimately they were a part of that recruiting overhaul that Steve Sarkisian and his staff did. The wide receivers, all but one of them, Emmett Mosley's a kid that came from the West Coast. He was a Stanford guy, and if you're a wide receiver at Stanford, you have to go somewhere else to be noticed. But other than that, you've got Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, were both kids that Texas recruited, right? Emmett Mosley came in. Tight end is one that I think Jack Endries is another cat from the West Coast that came in and will be a starter this year. But behind him, there's a homegrown tight end that put on 30 pounds in the offseason because he couldn't block last year. And so, again, it's a lot of guys that have been homegrown. And again, you mentioned NIL sprinkled in there. That's the nature of modern football, right? It's like college football. You have to be able to not only get them to the roster, but be able to keep them satisfied with the level of compensation based upon the world at large. So ultimately, on the defensive side of the ball, the big NIL haul and the big kind of transfer portal haul was the defensive tackle position. Texas somehow has had elite defensive tackles for multiple years, but they've been like 1-year guys. And so Texas went and grabbed 4 or 5 defensive tackles out of the portal, guys who, may be rotational guys. They're trying to moneyball, for lack of a better term, the production of the last couple of years. Some guys are really high ceilings, but also pretty decently established floors. So that's the big transfer position, is that interior of the defensive line.
So Texas is ranked number 1 in the AP, number 1 in the coaches poll, if I recall correctly.
First time in school history.
So, and it seems like they've done this based off of more player development and recruiting than the NIL. So, why do you think nationally, collectively, is the word I will use, Texas is getting the love going into the season, despite there being so much, for lack of a better term, unproven talent that's happening here?
I think outside of maybe Clemson or Penn State, most of the teams that would be in that position would have similar questions, right? Ohio State could be in that position, but would have similar questions.
100%.
Penn State and Clemson have, in my opinion, probably 2 of the better claims to be the top team in the country because of what they returned from a year ago, especially at the quarterback position. But because there are so many teams, there's so much turnover, there's so much turmoil at the top of the college football ranks. It's kind of a moot point to say that they're recycling it, because a lot of the teams that would have that same claim would also have those similar questions. And so, I think folks are really bought into the Arch Manning of it all. I think that probably floats the average quite a bit for them. There's some star power there. There's some name recognition there. And, folks got to see some flashes of what he could do, especially I rewatched his one start in the Mississippi State start, or his one SEC start, the Mississippi State start last year. And if we get that level of Arch Manning, there was a play where he saw man coverage pre-snap. They motioned out to an empty backfield. He stood and he took a hit, and he delivered a strike to a wide receiver running a slot fade in stride and scored a touchdown, right? If we get that level of Arch Manning throughout the year, then I think that the quarterback turnover is not going to be that big of a deal. And so again, back to your point, I think the reason Texas is getting a lot of the love is because a lot of the teams that would be in that spot have similar questions. And so folks now are bought into Texas has recruited really well. They've stacked top 3, top 5-ish questions in multiple years, and have proven with a school record back-to-back year of NFL draft picks that they're now developing these guys. And that's been the big difference for Texas overall. Like I said, said earlier, Texas was known for a while as the place where 5-stars go to die, right? And that's not the case anymore. Kelvin Banks, 5-star, comes to campus, day one starter, NFL 3 years later, right? You see those types of things happening at Texas over and over now. And so they've got, double-digit draft picks in multiple years. And so you can see the skins on the wall for the development. So now they've got the talent. We know they can be developed. And then there's not that much of a turnover differentiator between the other top teams. So it just seems like all things equal, people are bought into what Stark and his staff are doing.
Let me give you the opportunity to answer the question that has been floated around a little bit about Arch Manning, and that is this. If he's so good, why couldn't he supplant Quinn Ewers as the starter last year? I want you to speak to that narrative that's out there and give me your thought and your thought process behind your answer.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the play I point back to is in the game before the Ohio State game and the Arizona State game. Texas is on a fourth and season. It's a fourth and 13 play call where they're backed up. Arizona State is leading in overtime, and Texas is able to convert on a 4th and 13. That was Quinn Ewers checking out of the called play, seeing the coverage, knowing the players he had on the field, and ultimately knowing the offense well enough and delivering a strike to keep the season alive that ultimately led Texas to advancing an extra week in the college football playoff and avoiding being the only higher ranked seed to get upset in that round. And so that's a lot of what it comes down to, I think, with the Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers of it all, is that the coaching staff trusted Arch Manning's knowledge of the process and knowledge of the system and knowledge and the ability to make those adjustments in game. What redshirt freshman has that mental ability, right? There are very few redshirt freshmen that can come in on a 4th and 13 with the season on the line and recognize, okay, they're in this coverage. I need to make this call. I need to communicate with the center. I need to communicate with the wide receivers to put them in the right position. And then he put the ball on a freaking dot and made the play to extend the season and ultimately, win the game for Texas. So that to me was the differentiator. It wasn't a talent thing for Arch Manning. He's only been here for a year and a half at that point. Like that's what it was. Quinn Ewers knew the system, knew the process, and had the coach's trust to make those kinds of calls.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great answer. Thank you for sharing. Let's take a look at Arch Manning's on-field statistics. I guess you could say for the most part, he got in for like his redshirt freshman year. He basically touched his toe onto the field, but last year he played quite a bit and got a couple starts, got some mop up duty, had a series 2 or 3 here or there where he was utilized within the offense. He was 61 of 90, which is 67.8% passing last year. He threw for 939 yards, so a 10.4 yards average. Had 9 touchdown passes to 2 interceptions, and he had 25 carries for 108 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Describe his style of play to everybody who's not seen Arch beyond the one couple plays he had against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, and I think, folks hear Manning and think of a specific kind of athlete, but you have to remember that Arch's dad, Cooper, was the receiver of the family, right?
Right.
He wasn't his brothers, he wasn't the statue quarterback. And so you see a little bit of that athleticism in Arch's game. He's more willing to run the ball, to tuck it and make those kinds of plays. Some of his more highlight reel plays were things that he did with his feet, where he was able to, pull a bootleg and be able to get the ball to the right guy or have a shuffle pass on a bootleg kind of situation or a rollout. He had this really incredible broken play touchdown rush against Mississippi State. But, that's kind of the added element that he brings to the game. But he also, if you've watched the Texas offense for the last couple of years, it's been a very behind or at the line of scrimmage, maybe 5-7-ish yards in front of it. A lot of, intermediate routes and crossing patterns, because that's what Quinn Ewers was good at. His injury history, he lost a bit of speed on his long ball. You see some of those long longer passes were had a little bit more higher trajectory to them. And so Arch really does have a pretty solid or a more effective, I think, deep pass than Quinn Ewers did. So that's going to be something that I think the Texas offense is going to open up a bit, is trying to push the ball a bit more downfield, some of those deeper routes, some of those deeper patterns. Like I mentioned, that slot fade that he kind of dropped in the bucket to DeAndre Moore last year against Mississippi State. And that, I think, if you're looking for good Arch Manning tape, go out and watch that Mississippi State start. Mississippi State's defense wasn't very good last year, but it gives you a good indication of what his game is going to be like. He's going to use his feet effectively. He's probably going to run more than I think even Sark wants him to. Sark doesn't like his quarterbacks running all that much, but that's kind of part and parcel with playing quarterback nowadays. You have to have a little bit of athleticism, but ultimately he's going to push the ball downfield more, but he's also going to command more respect from defenses because he is able to use his feet effectively.
What's the weakness of this Texas offense? Is it the offensive line?
I want to say the offensive line, or maybe the running backs, which is a controversial take because I think I don't know how to diagnose what Texas's red zone issues were, but I do think it's something between those two, right? If you have, being able to score when you need 3 yards, or get a first down when it's 3rd and 2. So the offensive line, I think, has a lot of talent. We've never seen most of them play, right? DJ Campbell is a kid who came and he was a 5-star, and he hasn't really lived up to that billing. You've got Trevor Gooseby, who's a plus athlete. He was a basketball kid. He's 6'7", is dunking at 300 pounds, right? Just a massive, massive athlete. Brandon Baker was a kid on the other side that everybody wanted, in the country. He's a California kid. And then, the interior is going to be a question. The health, I think, of C.J. Baxter at the running back position is still the question I have, and why I'm waffling between running back and offensive line, because if C.J. Baxter is fully healthy from that knee injury, then I think the Texas running back room is going to be fine. But if he's not, as much as I love Quintravian Wisner and what he did for this offense last year, he was a 1,000-yard rusher. He's the only returning 1,000-yard rusher in the SEC. He ultimately isn't the running back to get you 3 yards between the tackles when you need to. That's just not his game. And that was a big differentiator for Texas. We saw it against Ohio State, right? They ran that toss play because they didn't trust the Texas running game to get, a couple of yards when they needed it. And so that, to me, it's got to be between one of those two. I'm kind of, skirting your question a bit because I don't know how to truly answer that question.
Well, maybe this will help. Kind of give me an update on Andre. Is it Kojo? Is that his pronunciation of his last name? Is he gone? Is he lost for the season? Was he going to be the left tackle?
No, so Andre Kojo is going to be out for the year. He was a rotational guy. He was in the mix for the right tackle spot.
Right tackle.
Okay. Yeah, so he was in the mix for the right tackle spot. Ultimately, I think it's going to be the competition has boiled down to between Brandon Baker, who is a second-year guy, and then Nick Brooks, who came in. Nick Brooks was an interesting recruiting evaluation because a lot of what folks were curious about Nick Brooks was he actually came in a little too big, a little too heavy in high school, and so he's done a really good job. I think he hasn't lost any weight, but his body has transformed. Like, look at his high school headshot, and then look at his headshot on the Texas page, and you see his face is thinned out a bit because he's kind of retooled his body. So Kojo's out, which sucks because Kyle Flood really likes to have probably 7 to 8-ish guys that you can rotate in and be able to sub kind of 1 for 1 along the offensive line. So losing Kojo is a big deal for Texas because I think he was probably going to be number 6 on that depth chart along the offensive line, probably again at right tackle. So ultimately that is a huge loss. But Brandon Baker and Nick Brooks, it's trending Brandon Baker from everything I'm hearing along the right side. Trevor Gooseby is the guy who stepped in on the left tackle side. He actually came in for Kelvin Banks last year when he was hurt. He played against A&M, and this is probably blasphemous among Texas fans, but you didn't really see a demonstrative drop-off in Kelvin Banks to Trevor Gooseby along that left side. A&M, as much as I hate praising A&M, they had a really good defensive line last year, and Trevor Gooseby held his own in a tough road environment against some guys who are now playing in the NFL. So I don't have too many I don't have too many concerns about it other than like we've never seen these guys play as a unit, which as somebody who, I didn't play offensive line very well, but I played offensive line and I've watched offensive line extensively. And the biggest thing with playing on the offensive line is familiarity and rhythm, right? Where is this guy's feet going to be? Where are his hands going to be? How do I need to stutter my feet to be able to pull or to be able to chip block to the next level? All of those things come with time and repetition. And so if Texas is playing Ohio State in week 6 rather than week 1, I feel probably better about the offensive line.
Let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. The AP recently just came out with their preseason All-American list, and Texas had 3 of them, all on the defensive side of the ball. Colin Simmons up front, who, by the way, hats off to him and his Twitter account for posting Julian Saint's picture with no words, nothing said, just when that announcement was made, boop.
Yeah.
That to me, I kind of like that kind of stuff. I was like, I would let my defensive guys, if they're going to say anything, just do stuff like that. Fantastic job on his part there. And then you also have at linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. and at safety Michael, is it Taff?
Yeah.
Okay. All 3 of them are preseason All-Americans and at 3 different levels of the defense. So defensively, I'm guessing you're feeling really good about this team.
I am. I think when you look at what Texas is going to be, and really what Texas was propelled by last year, like they were a defensive heavy team. A lot of folks talk about the offense, and Steve Sarkisian teams are always going to be offensive road shows, and he's even joked like I want to break the internet every week with something I do on the offensive side. But ultimately, I think the key to success for Texas over the last couple of years has been Pete Kwiatkowski's ability to limit teams and kind of put talent in the right position. So Colin Simmons is a transcendent talent at defensive line, at edge. He's going to be one of the first edges off the board next year because he is a sophomore this year, true sophomore. Came in last year and was one of the team's leading sack and tackle for loss cats as a true freshman. And you just don't really see guys having success along the line in the trenches when they're that young, because an 18, 19-year-old going against a 23-year-old offensive lineman, those are just, one's a kid and one's a grown man, right? So you don't normally see that. Colin Simmons is one of those transcendent kind of kids. Anthony Hill is an interesting case. He is an elite linebacker, but actually a lot of folks are saying his NFL future is also at the edge. He is his kind of forte as a linebacker is his ability to kind of make plays in the backfield to be disruptive. He was second on the team in tackles for loss a year ago. So he's really disruptive. Texas has him playing in more of a traditional interior linebacker role, but I wouldn't be shocked to see an NFL team draft him and have him playing edge or a pass rusher or an off the ball kind of outside linebacker role, depending on the scheme. But there's a reason why, again, he was a massive black eye for Texas A&M when he made that flip, because he was top linebacker in the state, and the state of Texas doesn't produce elite level linebackers as often as folks would think, right? Texas is not a linebacker rich state, and so when you have a kid like that, you got to get him. But Anthony Hill's a guy who's going to hear his name called probably early in the NFL draft, and he's alongside Texas is tinkering with some different looks, I think, at the other linebacker spot. Leonga Leifau was the other guy last year against Ohio State, but they've moved Trey Moore back from edge to linebacker to be they're going to play a little bit more hybrid. They're going to have some different looks depending on the teams that they're playing. So Trey Moore is playing back. They actually had a linebacker that they now listed edge because they're doing a little bit of a shuffle and kind of a reorg there. I mentioned it already. The interior of the defensive line, you can always tell that what the Texas staff doesn't feel great about in the offseason, because you'll see them grab 3 or 4 guys in the transfer portal, right? Last year, they didn't feel great about the wide receiver spot. They grabbed Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond, right? Texas didn't feel great about defensive tackle, and they grabbed 4 cats from the transfer portal defensive tackle this year. And so that's the one concern I have. The back end of the defense, a lot of talent. Michael Taff, folks underestimate Michael Taff a lot, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like he's this white kid from Austin Westlake High School, rich kid, but he came on, he walked on, turned down scholarships to walk on, and now he's a scholarship, All-American safety at Texas. The other safety spot is, again, Texas is gonna have to get in a new guy. Probably Xavier Filsamy is a name we're hearing a lot of buzz about. He was injured last year. He and Derek Williams both are kids that'll probably factor a lot into that role. And then the cornerback spots, they're still trying to sort it out. Manny Muhammad will be at the corner, but he's a guy who 2 years ago was a freshman All-American, and then I think he suffered a bit that folks were throwing away from Jade Barron, who ended up winning the Thorpe Award, and just kind of targeting him more. So that's something that I've got an eye on. But I'm an old school guy. Games are won or lost in the trenches, and so Texas's front seven, their front four-ish, I feel really good about that group.
Yeah. I want to throw this interesting stat out to you because it speaks to your defense in this game. In the last 20 years, when a quarterback makes his first start against the number one team in the country, he is 0-18. Julian Sain will be making his first start. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. Last 20 years, when a quarterback makes his first start in his career in college football against the number one ranked team in the country, he is 0-18 in those 20 years. Wow. Julian Sain will be making his first start against Texas. I want you to respond to that stat. Obviously, it's got to make you feel good.
It does, but Texas also has a guy who's in his first real start. Like he has obviously Arch has a start, but this is his first year as a full-time starter. I've said it. I've been saying it all offseason. I think this is going to be a defensive game. And so that makes sense to me. Like, the pressure is on the offensive coaches to get it done, I think, because Ohio State's defense is going to be really stinking good. Texas defense is going to be really stinking good. Now, if it was in Austin, I'd feel a whole lot better about it. So having the friendly confines of Buckeye Stadium is going to play in his favor. But if you can get a young quarterback rattled early, things snowball really, really fast. And
sure.
Pete Kwiatkowski likes to do some weird things. You can go, he ran like basically an I formation on defense last year, where he had multiple players lined up behind each other and they kind of all scrambled at the snap. So he likes to mix in some exotic things. He really likes to give quarterbacks a lot to think about. And ultimately, Ohio State has another one of those blue shell players on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know. He's a little wide receiver. You've probably heard of him, right? So, Texas did a decent job, corralling him last year. They did a good job of, and Pete Kwiatkowski's kind of claim to fame or calling card defensively is, I want to keep everything in front of me. You're not going to beat me over the top. And so that, again, Ohio State's going to probably try to push the ball because one of their strengths is that wide receiving core. I think they're probably top 3 guys would be wide receiver 1 at most schools in the country. I'll just go ahead and say it like that.
Sure.
And so that to me makes me feel good about the defense as well, because that's what Texas wants to do, is limit those deep shots, limit those deep balls. You can't eliminate them completely because this Ohio State passing game, these wide receivers are just too stinking talented for that. But if you can keep them from gashing you 6-7 times a game, I feel pretty good about it.
Let's talk coaches for a minute here. Let's talk Steve Sarkisian, man. Year number 5.
Yep.
It seems like he has been building every single year, and he's gotten a little bit closer every single year to the ultimate goal that you have there in Austin. Where is the pulse of the fan base going into year number 5 under Steve Sarkisian? Obviously, preseason ranked number 1. I gotta imagine the expectations are through the roof.
I think the expectations are high, but I think for the first time in recorded history, Texas fans are kind of trying to take it with a grain of salt. I think because there's so much newness, Texas fans get a rep for getting, too far over their skis a lot. But ultimately, I think folks are bought into what Steve Sarkisian is doing, and because the proof is in the pudding, right? There have been a lot of there's been some snake oil sold to Texas fans by head coaches in the past, and so it's good to see that actually coming to fruition. I think folks are cautiously optimistic. Folks are bought into what we've said. Right? Texas is really talented. They've done a good job at developing it, but Texas is also very, very young, and that's part and parcel of being at the level of Texas is. Oftentimes, old teams win in these situations, so that is something to keep in mind there. But the vibes are pretty strong. Folks are bought into Sark. I think folks are the radar is up a little bit on, and I keep coming back to this. Texas's red zone concerns are a bit of a red flag for folks as it relates to Steve Sarkisian. And is it a mentality thing? Is it a play calling thing? I'm not quite sure. But if you go and look at the red zone percentages, from year to year. There was a pretty big drop off a couple years back, and that's when Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson graduated. I think they hit a lot of the flaws in that area of the game. But when you're trying to nitpick things like that, it turns into like things are at a good spot.
How is Steve at Texas when coming off a loss, playing that team the following year? Does he seem to learn from his mistakes? Does he seem to have a different maybe game plan to answer some of the things that maybe troubled Texas? Of course, I'm talking, obviously the big games in the SEC where you're going to play those teams every single year.
Yeah, he's not necessarily the person to put as much, at least publicly, emphasis on one game. He's not going to say, "Oh, this is a revenge game. This is he's not that kind. He's just not that kind of guy." And I think those things, you can look into his history and his sobriety journey and kind of his, him kind of pulling himself up from losing his, dream job to now where he's back at Texas. There's a level of self-awareness that I think he has that comes from some of his struggles and some of the demons that he's battled in his life. And so he doesn't really put like too much emphasis on like, this is a must-win game. You're never going to hear him say that, at least publicly. You're never going to hear him say those things. He really, I think, understands what's important in life. And so that helps him a bit. Now he does, sometimes I think overthink things. He kind of outthinks himself sometimes and tries to get a little too cute. Sometimes he gets a little too, he tries to do too much, and there's, sometimes you just got to run the ball,
Right.
with all the cute stuff and just put the ball in somebody's hand. And so like that to me sometimes I think becomes a nagging issue. But again, when you're thinking about where Texas was, and now again 5 years ago where Texas is now, his first year was 5-7, and now we're talking about Texas being a couple of plays away from playing for a national championship. So, he's learned, he's developed, he's grown, and he's grown into the job really, really well.
So let's talk kind of big picture here a little bit. These two teams have played each other 4 times. This is game number 5. It has gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The first one that you mentioned, 2005, that was in Columbus, Ohio, in the Horseshoe, was a 25-22 Texas win. The next year in Austin, the Buckeyes get their comeuppance 24-7. And then they played 3 years later in 2009 in the Fiesta Bowl. Again, a close game, 24-21. Longhorns got the win there over my idol, Jim Tressel, who ended up being 1-2 all time against Texas. And then we didn't play again until last year, 28-14. It's back and forth, and this will be the second time these two teams have played in the shoe. Again, Texas leads 1-0 in the shoe. So looking at some of those trends, I guess you could call them, and the fact that Texas came in to Ohio Stadium and won the first time, what are the players talking about and or the coaches about playing game 1 on the road at 12 noon on Fox and this being the biggest game of the weekend?
Yeah, again, I think the players take on some of Sark's mentality of like, they know this is they know it's a big deal, but like when you talk about like what Texas's goals are for the year, like this is going to come out the wrong way, but I'm just going to say it. I think they're trying to treat this as a big non-conference game and not all of the fanfare. The season rests on it. Blah, they're treating it as an important non-conference game, just as they would, I think, in a lot of ways, treat an important conference game or an important game where, the winner of this game is probably in the driver's seat for a bye week in the CFP. They're probably going to end up in that position, in that pole position for it. But also, Texas really, if you win the SEC, or even if you finish second or sometimes third in the SEC, you're still playing in the postseason. And we saw Ohio State battle back from the first weekend of the postseason and win a national championship. And so they're trying to thread the needle of, this is an important game. This is a big game, and we know all the fanfare, and we know folks love this, and it's going to be a big thing. But also, like, our goal right now is to win the SEC. Right. And so if we win the SEC, we're getting a bye week in the first round of the college football playoff. So I think they understand the gravity of the game, but I think they're not going to put that unnecessary or kind of burdensome pressure on themselves with this game.
Hmm. What odds do you get that this is the first of two games between these two teams this season?
I would be shocked if the only way that this isn't is if it's like a what if they're on the opposite sides of the bracket, and then still like they'll probably end up playing in the later rounds. I ultimately pretty high to put a short answer to
Yeah,
it.
it feels that way, doesn't it?
Oh yeah,
Has Texas ever lost two times in a row to the same team?
that is a good question. I don't like in back to back games. Not that I can think of. Not that I can remember. I'm trying to remember what, like when they've ended seasons with a loss. They've not had like this kind of
Yeah,
they've usually
it's
the first game is Sam Houston State or San Jose
yeah,
State.
right. It's like it would be really, really unique for that to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
I was curious if you knew that off the top of your head. That's being lazy and just not looking it
No,
up,
you're good.
Gerald. So
You're good. You're good.
Texas. Okay. This has been really good. I feel like you've dove into some interesting off-season questions going into game one. It's really hard to do a preview when you don't know everything. You know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think we covered everything pretty good there from a Texas standpoint. Let me ask you this. This will be curious to get your perspective as a Texas fan. What is your view of Ohio State nationally as a program, and more specifically, Ryan Day?
So I think those are two separate answers. I think I Ohio State is one of those like unquestioned blue bloods in college football. There's no two ways around it. Like you cannot talk college football without talking about Ohio State and dotting the I and all of the things that go into like Ohio State being Ohio State. And I think as much as I'm embracing the future of what college football is and is becoming. I also like the traditions, like the traditional helmets and the helmet stickers and like the scarlet and gray, right? Those things are like integral to the fabric of college football in the same way that I feel like the icy whites and the burnt orange and the simplistic image that Texas has on their uniform. I think those things are integral to college football. I think Ryan Day is an interesting case of Ryan Day is one of those he's a one of the best coaches in the country. There's no two ways around it. There are very few active coaches with a national championship, right? There's Dabo, there's him, there's I'm missing one, but
Smart.
yeah, yeah, can't forget Kirby Smart, right? Because they own Texas at this point. So like that, like there's something to be said about like he's done a good enough job to not only win a national championship, but do it with the disadvantage of playing an extra game. Right? I think as somebody who's watched a really good coach struggle against their rival. Mac Brown and Bob Stoops had that thing going for years where Mac could not get past Bob Stoops. And so I know the frustration as a fan. You're like, this one stinking thing, if they could get over this one stinking thing, everything would be great. But for as a Texas fan, Ryan Day figured out the right levers to pull and, went from one of the worst offensive performances I think I've ever seen on a football field to having the best offense in the playoff and riding that to a national championship. So that level of adaptability, that level of like kind of self-scouting or kind of looking at yourself in a mirror is what makes good coaches.
Yeah, it's an interesting answer. Yeah, that's cool. Um, yeah, I think hearing other people's perspective of Ryan Day is incredibly interesting to me.
Yeah.
The psychology behind that. How many coaches? And by the way, we forgot one national championship coach who is still coaching. He just signed with West Virginia, Coach O.
That's true. That is, I forgot Ogeron. Yeah.
No one even counts it. No one even looks at it. They're just like, yeah, it wasn't him.
Oh man.
I love Coach O though. His
He's
interviews are
great.
fantastic.
Oh yeah.
No, I think to get back to Ryan Day, uh, it's very interesting to hear people's perspective of Ryan Day, and maybe this question would be incredibly interesting. And I know you're going to be incredibly biased, and I would expect you to be. But how many coaches are out there who you would trade Coach Sark for right now?
Whew, that is a very good question. Like my biased fan answer is like none, right?
Right.
In that's not to say that I don't think there are better coaches or coaches that, obviously there are coaches out there. I think, Kirby Smart has officially owned Steve Sarkisian up until this point, right? So like there are coaches that got the best of him. He's lost some, some weird games and things like that. But I think why I say that is because of like there's such a thing as being a good coach that's not a good fit at a school. And I think there are like I don't know if Ryan Day's personality would vibe with what Texas fans have to do. I don't know if Kirby Smart's personality would vibe with what you have to do as the Texas head coach, right? So Steve Sarkisian has the thing, right? He's got whatever makes him work. Look at, again, Tom Herman. Tom Herman didn't necessarily get fired for the on the field stuff. He made some of the wrong people angry, and that accelerated some of his departure from the program, right? Where you've got to be the right person to get the right, the boosters in line. You've got to have a good relationship with the athletic director and all those things. I think Steve Sarkisian fits. He is the right fit. It takes a weird kind of person to be the head football coach at a blue blood like Ohio State. Ryan Day is wired different than everybody else. Kirby Smart is wired different than everybody else. It takes a very specific, and even like within those things, like I think the Ohio State coach and the Texas coach have a very different personality profile. I think that what it would take to coach at Georgia is very different than what it would take to coach in Austin. And so Steve Sarkisian seems to be the right kind of guy for it. And so it's hard for me to say I would trade anybody, but ultimately like, Kirby Smart is out there and beat Sark twice in the same year, right? Ryan Day and his defensive staff out-schemed Texas, so there are coaches that have beat him. But I think from a fit perspective, from everything that it takes to be a head coach at a blue blood like Texas, like Ohio State, like, that team up north, like Georgia, like Oklahoma, Sark is the right fit at Texas.
All right. Not to put you on the spot, and we are recording this, by the way, everybody, a week in advance. So I will give you the ability to change your answer or to pass if you don't want to. But your prediction was so spot on last year. I'm interested to hear what your prediction would be for this one.
Yeah, I've been waffling on it for a while. I've been going back and forth. I haven't waffled on the fact that I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than I think folks are going to be expecting. I think you're going to, if you like defense, this is going to be a good way to start your college football season. Watch this game. It's going to be a defensive slugfest. I think where I'm leaning Texas this year in a close game because I think Texas, when you look at a defensive game, Texas has I think Texas is going to be able to pound the ball a little bit with CJ Baxter. They've got basically 4-ish running backs that they could rotate in. So I think they'll have some fresh legs late in the game where you need to pound the ball. And so, I think I've got Texas in a 21-17 type of situation. Again, I think I would be shocked either way if it's more than a score. But again, we're a week out. I've got my burnt orange glasses on. You can see the Longhorn poster behind me. You can see my diploma behind that. So I've got to go with my horns, I think, in this one. And I'll say something like 21-17, 24-17 kind of situation.
Yeah, you're very close to my prediction as well, as of right now. But I'm gonna give myself a little bit more time to chew on this since this won't post until next week, everybody. But thank you so much, Gerald. Please tell everybody once again where they can find you, follow you in the Longhorn Republic. This has been a fantastic interview.
Yeah, you can catch us anywhere where you find podcasts. We're just the Longhorn Republic podcast. You can also find us on any social media, Twitter and Blue Sky, we're Longhorn Pod. Facebook, Instagram, it's Longhorn Republic. And I'm personally on all those places at GH Goodridge.
There you go. Go check them out, everybody. Thank you so much, Gerald, once again, for jumping on here with us, talking about this big matchup. I have a feeling we'll be talking to each other again.
Sounds great.
Have a good night.
Hook 'em, baby.
And we want to thank Gerald from the Longhorn Republic. What a great interview. We appreciate you so much, my friend. It's always great, Chris, when we do these previews to meet and work with such great people, all thanks to the College Huddle. Head on over to thecollegehuddle.com and find other schools that you might be interested in. See if we have a podcast over there. Go to the members section, go to the conference. There you'll find maybe there's a G5 school that you would like to see if we have in. If you're an Ohio State fan, maybe you're curious what other MAC schools we've got. We currently have Toledo and Ohio. Both of those schools have podcasts currently in the College Huddle, and we're always looking to add more and
BG?
bring more on. Not yet. I
We
gotta
need us
feel.
some BG. Our
I
boy's
gotta.
up there.
I gotta feel like this year someone's gonna start a Bowling Green podcast, man. I might start it just to get Eddie on,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Well, I think Chris, you and I should take a little college huddle media trip up to Bowling Green, Ohio,
I love it.
and go interview Eddie after a game. Ask him a bunch of Ohio State questions.
And watch our credentials get revoked.
Probably. No, we wouldn't do that. We would be professional as it could be. But anyways, yeah, this is going to be super exciting, Chris, this game this Saturday. And it's that time, man. It's time to give our predictions. So, that being said, I will go first because they're going to need to hear you after I'm done. Since 2019, Chris, I have never predicted a loss for Ohio State. I have always predicted Ohio State was going to win every single game. What can I say? I'm a homer. In our preseason predictions, Chris, I felt like Ohio State is going to be somewhere around a 10-2 team. And that 10-2 would get you in the college football playoff. I have a saying. I need to coin this. Win 10 and you're in. I created that. So I always felt like Ohio State was going to get back in the college football playoff this year. They would probably get somewhere around 10 wins. So I needed to find 2 losses on the schedule if I felt they were going to be a 10-2 team. Okay. It was easy for me to settle on the home opener against Texas as one of those losses. New starting quarterback, revenge factor for Texas coming off the Cotton Bowl. It just felt easy to put that game as a loss. So, I'm not going to do it, Chris. Ohio State wins this football game 20-17. Couldn't do it, Chris. I couldn't do it.
You've been talking this all summer long.
I'm just too much of a homer.
You've predicted it.
I can't do it, Chris. I can't turn. I felt like I was cheating on my love, and I can't cheat on my love. I love her too much. Ohio State wins 2017. Mark it down.
Do we want to go now with me, or do we want to go with our?
Yeah. Well, we'll have the graphic for everybody later this week. So go ahead, Chris.
All right. Well, I do think that Ohio State's going to win this. I think that Arch Manning is going to be very, very sore after this game. You're talking about a Texas team replacing 4 starters on the offensive line, and the best of the 4 starters is setting out the season with a torn, I believe it's MCL, ACL. Losing that right tackle was huge. To me, I just don't feel like they're going to be able to contain what I think is going to be a very good Ohio State defensive line. Arch is going to be very uncomfortable all day. I feel like Julian Sayin is not going to be perfect. Guys, you're going to have to give the kid some grace. He's going to need a little grace, especially in the first couple games. But he's going to do enough, along with what I think is going to be a very, very good run game and what I think is also going to be the number 1 defense in the country again. I've got Ohio State winning this one 31-21 in only one of only 2 games where they will give up 20 points.
A lot of faith in that defense. I do too. I got a ton of faith in this defense, Chris. I feel like defensively, this football team, Chris, is going to be very, very good. I think at first I didn't know how to feel about the defensive coordinator hire and Matt Patricia. As the summer went on into fall camp and then what we got to see with our own 2 eyes, I'm very confident in this defense. Very confident. You know what else I'm confident in? I'm confident in the offensive line.
Yes.
And I'm also confident that our talent at wide receiver is just so dang good.
Which a young quarterback is going to definitely benefit from.
100%.
If you get that ball near Jeremiah Smith, if you get that ball near Brandon Ennis, if you get that ball near Carnell Tate or Max Clare, they're going to catch it. And then we got solid guys coming out of the backfield who can catch the ball. We got not just Max Clare, we got Jelani Thurman, who has shown flashes of being able to catch the ball. A guy who definitely needs to work on that blocking a little bit, but he can catch the ball. Will Kazmarek has proven himself to be solid. You go on down our depth chart of our wide receivers, 6 guys I guarantee you could start on any team in the country. Guys, to me, I think Ohio State's just got too much. Too much. And even with a quarterback who is, I'm not going to say inexperienced, I'm going to say who lacks reps. Because he's not inexperienced. He just lacks reps. I don't know that there's that much of an advantage with Arch Manning given the reps that he had. He had a couple games where he started against some trash teams. And I feel like Julian could do enough. And I don't think Arch will be able to do enough.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm at a place here where I think this is going to be a defensive struggle. I don't think we all think that Ryan Day is going to be this. He's just going to be this. Let it all hang out. I'm going to be kind of balls of the wall coach here from this point on because of what happened in the college football playoff last year. And I don't necessarily think that is going to be true in this situation.
I think he'll be more aggressive, Eric, but I don't know that he's going to be all out.
I don't think he's going to be super aggressive early on in this game. I think he's going to actually I think he's going to try to I think he's going to try to let the offensive line in the running game establish himself. And I don't hate that. I don't hate that idea at all.
I don't either. It gets Julian comfortable.
Exactly.
Let him just make easy passes let him make what I like to call the Drew Aller passes, those passes at 10 yards or less. Get him comfortable.
I gotcha. So, all that being said, I feel good about this prediction. I'm starting to feel better about this game. It's going to be a heck of a game.
It will be.
Just like in the video I posted Monday morning, guys, do not listen to these national pundits who are out there just making clickbait, trying to say Texas is just going to blow Ohio State out. It is not going to happen. Also, don't be that fan who's like, I think Ohio State's going to blow them out. That's not going to happen either, man. If there's a blowout, I think it's Ohio State that blows Texas up. I just don't think it's going to be.
I think it's a double-digit swing, Eric. I do think Ohio State wins by 10.
That's not a blowout.
Can I tell you, though? Don't be surprised if we see another defensive touchdown.
Caleb Downs?
Don't be surprised if that's not the game changer, just like Sawyer Scoop and Score.
Okay. Interesting. All right, guys, let us know what you think about what we think down in the comment section below. Put your score prediction down there. Did you like our game preview? I hope you enjoyed the new format. It feels good to me, Chris. It feels right. I feel like we've dialed this thing in, and it feels pretty good on what we're doing here. So this is the way it's going to be for the next 12 games. We'll be breaking down every game for you this way. Hopefully we will have a good person on to record and interview for everybody for the game.
The next 15 games.
Touche. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you. Again, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up, get us a like, and put a comment down in the comment section below. Be kind to one another. I owe someone's OH. Sing Carmen, Ohio with all your heart. Chris, till next time, you know what to do. OH!
I owe football's back, baby! Let's do this thing.
Go Bucks!